Hi, my name is Dear Tiagi, and in this video I'll be going over hard SAT reading tips and problems for the SAT. So to start, how do we approach a hard SAT question? Well, to start, the way we approach every reading question on the SAT and writing question is by first, step 1, reading the question. Okay? And the reason why we were reading the question first is because we want to ensure that we're not wasting any time when we're reading the passage. Because we're not reading the passage for enjoyment, we're not reading it to just like understand everything that happens. We're reading it with one goal in mind, and that goal is to solve the question that's being asked by the question. So first step is to read the question. And second step then is to read the passage and find the answer. It's a simple step, but that's the second step. And so when we're reading the passage, I think a lot of times people might be like zoning off, they might like be unfocused. But if we read the question first and we read the passage, then we like know we're like hyper focused into solving that one issue. And also, if we read the passage first, while we're reading the passage, what we should do is we should be actively reading it. And so what actively reading means is when you're reading the passage, you actually understand what's happening. You're not just reading words, which I think sometimes happens. People just read the words, they don't actually process what's happening. You have to actually process actively what the passage is saying. And so to do this, a easy way might be to take short notes. So when I say take short notes, I'm not meaning like a sentence or anything longer. I mean like 1 or 2 words every couple of maybe a sentence, maybe 2 sentences, etc. And you just write this on your paper. You write down quick notes in the passage. By doing this, especially in harder passages, what you do is you actively process the information from the passage and you make sure you're actually comprehending what the passage is saying, and you also make sure that you don't have to reread because you have your notes there, so you know what's happening and you don't have to reread. But it's okay to reread. Rereading is not a bad thing, but it just helps you make sure that you're actively reading it. And also, the answer you're looking for will always be in the passage. It's always there. Okay, because think about it. If the answer was not in the passage and it asked you to predict something, then the test would be subjective, and it wouldn't be a good test because there could be multiple answers. So the College Board designs it so every question that you need can be answered using directly the passage, every reading question, that is. So the common types of wrong answers, I think it's helpful to understand these, to understand and look out for like traps, are answers that are 1 or 2 words apart, or 1 or 2 words wrong, right? These might have like extreme wordings like always or never or something like that. Next, you might have an answer that's not relevant to the passage, like at all. It might be might be answering a different question. It might be not the right passage, I guess. So not relevant to the question. You might have one that's making an inference, right? So what I said before, all the answers are in the passage. So if it's a question, if an answer is making an inference and it's like a reasonable inference, right? It kind of makes sense. The answer is still wrong, right? Because they don't want you to make an inference. They want you to use what's in the passage to find the answer. So no inferences. Next, a answer might be the opposite of the correct answer. So they often do this on the math section too. They have an answer that's the opposite of the right answer. They also might have a question or a wrong answer that's confused the relationship. So they might have a relationship question and they might have confused the relationship in one of the answers. And again, this question kind of like answer throws people off because they read just the words in the passage and like, oh, this says the same thing, and they click it, but really it's not, relating them the right way. And again, they might just be asking, or the answer might just be answering the wrong question, and you might get that wrong that way. But these answers, you can all avoid these answers by, again, reading the answers carefully and actively reading the passage. If you're actively reading it and you actually understand what's happening, then you can fairly easily get rid of these wrong answer traps. Okay, let's try out some questions now. Whoops. Okay, so this question says that high levels of, actually no, before we read the question, right? Or before we read the passage, we have to read the question. So the question's asking us which choice most effectively uses data from the graph to illustrate the claim. So we have a graph. I like to look at graphs after I read the passage because I don't really know what it's saying unless I read the passage first. So the passage says that high levels of public uncertainty about which economic policies a country will adopt can make planning difficult for businesses, but measures of such uncertainty have not tended to be very detailed. Okay? Recently, however, okay, that's fine. Recently, however, economist Sandy something analyzed trends in news reports to derive measures not only on, okay, I think my page cut out, but not only or general economic policy uncertainty, but also for uncertainty related to specific areas of economic policy like tax or trade policy. Okay, so this person, I'll call her SH, she analyzed trends in news reports to make measures to not only get general econ uncertainty, right, from the people, but she also found within this, she found the uncertainty reflected around tax policy and trade policy. Then one revelation, revelation to her work is that a general measure may not fully reflect uncertainty about specific areas of policy, as in the case of the United Kingdom, where general policy uncertainty blank. So the claim is that one revelation of her work is that general measure, so this general economic measure, may not fully reflect uncertainty about certain public areas of policy, like tax or trade policy. So what she's saying is that this idea, general economic uncertainty, isn't being reflected properly, isn't like reflected about certain economic issues. So having maybe a low economic uncertainty here still could mean that there's a high tax uncertainty or something like that, because it says that the economic uncertainty doesn't mean general economic uncertainty doesn't mean that there might still not be uncertainty about taxes or trade or other smaller specific areas of the economy. Okay, so the passage, or sorry, the graph shows us a the general economic policy is the darker one. The lighter one is the trade policy, and tax and spending policy is the um, middle one, I guess. So we have that graph, and this is from 2005 to 2010. Okay, and these are percents, I guess. Okay, so the value here is saying which effectively uses data from the graph to illustrate the claim. So again, we want one that shows there's a high, or sorry, we want opposites. General economics should be like high or low, and then tax or trade has to be high or low to show that her claim is correct. So looking at the answers, D is the only answer that does that. D says that it was substantially lower than uncertainty about trade policy in 2005 and substantially higher than uncertainty about trade policy in 2010. So general economic policy was very low, but there was still a high uncertainty in trade policy, which shows that trend. And in 2010, general economic policy was high, but trade policy was very low, which again shows that trend. So D is the only correct answer, because that's exactly what the passage wants, and that's what we analyzed. Looking at the other ones, A says analyze closely what uncertainty about tax and policy spending in 2005, but differed from uncertainty about tax and policy spending. So yeah, we don't want to align closely. That's again, it's the opposite of what we want. So A is not correct. B was substantially lower than uncertainty about tax and public spending policy each year from 2005 to 2010. So we don't want to like say it's higher or lower. We just want to say there's a big difference a lot of times. So B might not be the best answer because it's not really answering the question right or the claim. And then C reaches highest level between 2005 and 2010, the same year that uncertainty about trade policy. And C just irrelevant. It's not answering the right question. So the answer is D in this case. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, so this one says the question is asking which finding, if true, would most directly support the idea advanced by Gilday, Zuniga, and Dial. So as media consumption has become increasingly multi-platform and social, mediated, active news acquisition has diminished, so call it active news diminished in favor for a attitude known as news find me. So news find me has increased, in which people passively rely on their social networks and the ambient media environments for information about current events. So they rely on social for news. HGDZ and TD examined data on a representative group of adults in the United States to determine participant strength of NFM attitude, political knowledge, and political interest. So they did a study talking about the attitude, knowledge, and interest, political interest. These are all political knowledge, political interest. Although no major election took place sufficiently near the study of this person and that person to identify causality between NFM and voting behavior, they did posit that NFF might reduce voting probability through an indirect effect. So their idea is that this attitude of NFF, an increase in attitude of NFM, equals a decrease in voting probability, but through a indirect means. So it's not directly correlated NFM to voting. Indirectly, there's some kind of mediator in the middle that makes NFM to voting probability less likely. So A, NFM attitude tends to increase in strength as major elections approach, and people are significantly more likely to vote in major elections than in minor elections. So this is saying that the NFM attitude increases, which I guess is what we want to talk about, but then it just says that we vote more likely in major elections than in minor elections, which is unrelated to the question. We're not comparing major or minor, we're comparing just like voting in general. So A is irrelevant, A is not the answer. B, NFM attitude has a strong negative effect on political knowledge and interest, and there is known to be a strong positive correlation between political knowledge and interest and the likelihood of voting. So this is a good answer because this is exactly showing us a relationship between NFM and voting probability. It says that NFM attitude has a strong negative effect on political knowledge, so it means a decrease in political knowledge, and then this decrease in political knowledge means that there's a strong positive correlation. So positive, even though it says positive, what a positive correlation means is as one variable increases, the other variable increases. So this correlation between political knowledge and interest in the likelihood of voting. So a decrease in political knowledge would mean, because it's positively correlated, a decrease in the voting probability. And therefore, through an indirect means, right, they showed that NFM, an increase in NFM means a decrease in voting probability. So B is our answer. Looking at C, C says political interest is known to have a strong positive effect on likelihood of voting, but only a weak positive effect on political knowledge. Okay, and NFM attitude shows little correlation with either. Okay, so this is saying that NFM attitude shows little correlation, which is not what we want to show. We want to show that it has strong correlation, or at least some causality or correlation between topics. So C is not the right answer. It's not saying the right thing. And D, the likelihood of voting increases as political knowledge increases, and the relationship between NFM attitude and political knowledge tends to strengthen as the size. Okay, this is the opposite. This is saying that NFM attitude increases political knowledge, which increases voting probability, which is the opposite of what we want to say. We want to say that it decreases voting probability. So D is the opposite, and therefore the answer is B. So I know that might have been blurry to read the questions, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the questions in a PDF below. So while you're watching this video, just be sure to look at that PDF to see the questions. And yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye.